Hi everyone, it's Miss Leigh here from the Longmont Museum, and I'm here to bring you Discovery Days at home while the museum is closed. So we'll be making crafts with things that we can find around our house, and today I thought we'd make something springtime-y, and one of the things I think about first when I think about spring are birds. There's always birds chirping and singing and hopping around looking for worms and things. And I think one of the more famous ones is the red-breasted robin. So I thought we could make one today. And I'll turn you down to the work surface so you can see what we're going to use. Should be some pretty straightforward things. Of course, remember there's always ways that you can substitute for materials if you don't have what I have. And if you don't have paint, use markers. If you don't have markers, use crayons. If you want to do something completely different, then you should. If you want to use all sequins instead of using paint, you can do that. If you want to cut up pieces of yarn and glue them together instead of coloring the surface, you can do that too. So it's really up to your creativity and what you have at your house to use, okay? So the red-breasted robin, I'll take you down to the surface so you can see, but first, I made this one. He's cute, right? Here. You can see he's got little feathers cut into his wing here. And then he's got a tail with some little tail feathers. And I used up some torn paper to create this little spot in his chest that's this red color. And then this yellow piece of paper I cut from just a scrap of yellow paper I already had. And this is a white piece of paper that I cut into a tiny circle. And then I used a marker to color it in. Because most birds kind of have like a little bit of, well, a lot of birds. And specifically this one has a little bit of white around its eye. So I thought that would help it look a little bit more realistic, but also so it shows up better. So what I did here was I cut everything out. And then I painted the different parts, and I used a piece of tissue to blot off some of the paint so that it would dry faster. And I set it aside to dry while I prepared all the little tiny red pieces that we'll be using for the red chest. All right, I'll turn the camera down so you can see the work surface and see all the materials you'll need. Let's get started. Okay, you can see I've got my scissors, a paper plate, and I chose a small one, not only because that's what I have at my house, which is true. I only have the small ones. So, but yeah, I think the small ones are good for this because, you know, birds are little, and this is kind of like a real-sized bird. And then we've got some paint, and I've mainly used brown and black on mine, so that's the color that I'm using there. And of course, I've got to have a brush, and I do have a container of water, paint water, to wash my brush, and tissue to blot the paint. Turn it up a little bit, there we go. And I've got some glue, a marker, black marker for the eye, and then the paper that I'm using here is I've got some scrap paper that's yellow for the beak because I only need just like a little tiny bit. And then I've got some other leftover bits of reddish paper that I tore to make this little confetti. So we'll do that together in a minute. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a line on our plate and cut it. So we're only going to use half the plate right now. Oh, you know, I guess I should have said you need a pencil if you're going to draw a line, and you do, and I should have said that. I just want to cut the plate in half. There's my line. Now, let's compare. Okay, you can see that my bird is smaller than this piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut part of it off. You don't need anything to trace. Well, all I did here was I left a little piece right here for the tail, and then I cut in this way, all the way here. Then you can cut little bits to make his head look rounder later. But I'm not going to do this first. I'm going to cut it in half first because I think that's easiest. And remember, when we cut things, we want to keep our thumb in the small hole and on the small hole on the upper side, right? And then the bigger hole has the rest of our fingers. And it always keeps pointing away. The metal part points away from us. I put whatever I'm cutting far back into my scissors, probably most of the time. And then I squeeze, and then I open, and I move forward in the same place. There we go. I'm going to save this for some other craft sometime. It's a good half of a plate. A lot of my crafts start with a half plate. So now I've got this little part to cut here. So the most important thing is to remember to leave this little piece here for the tail. But hey, if you cut it off accidentally, it's no big deal. You'll just end up gluing on tail feathers afterwards. Now I do cut here, and see what I'm trying to do is, you see the kind of the ridge in the plate? I'm following that shape. That's how I decided where to do this, but it's not quite on that ridge. So I'm just cutting, and when I cut a curve, I hold it here with my non-cutting hand, and with this one, I cut a little bit, and then before I squeeze any more, I turn with this hand a little bit, cut a little bit, and then I turn with this hand. So cut, turn, cut, turn. There you go. So this is the beginning of my bird. Now if you look at my bird here, you'll notice that I have rounded the head. This is an optional step, but I think it makes it look more like a bird. So you know what I did? I just gave it a little snip right here. And then I snipped it again right there. It's pretty close. And you can give it some other little snips if you want to make it look more round. You see, I just kept cutting the little edges off of the round spots, or the pointy spots there, to make them round. All right. On the tail, I am going to cut some little slits here to be the tail feathers. I'm just doing 3. 1, 2, 3. That's all. All right. And then this part here, we're going to save and use to be our wings. So you'll pick a side that you like to be the wing, and I'm going to cut it in half for now. Do I want the big, thick side for the wing? Do I want the smaller side? Up to you. For me, for this one, I'm going to make the big wings, I think. But I think this is too big for the bird's body. I just want about half of that, like maybe this much, you know? So I'm going to cut part of it off. Yeah, because I kind of think that the wing should be close to the back here when you glue it on. And now I want to cut some of the feathers in the wings. So I just make some, like maybe 3 cuts. 1, 2, 3. You see? If you curl them a little bit, that'll kind of curl out when you put them on. You know how I curled it? I put my thumb on one side and my finger on the other side, and I kind of pushed like this and kind of rolled it against my thumb. Works on most kind of paper. So when I attach it, it's going to look kind of like a bird. All right, now I don't need the rest of this for now. I'm going to kind of push it over to the side. Let's paint, okay? This is my paint guard, I guess. It's kind of just my scrap sheet that I paint on. All right. going to use some brown and some black. Now I'm going to paint the whole thing, and the same with this. But I'm not going to use a lot of paint, just a little bit, because I don't want it to be really like sticky and hard to dry. So the first thing I do with my brush is I always dip into the water first. Let me move it so you can see the water. I know it's kind of dark because I was painting with it earlier, so excuse the darkness of my water. So I got the water, and now I'm going to wipe it on the edge. I don't tap it, I wipe it off, because we don't want a lot of water. And I start with my lighter color first, which in this case is brown. And I'm just going to paint. Now you see these little pieces that we cut? I'm going to try and paint that way. If we paint up and down, they're going to get stuck. So paint the direction of the cuts. And then, oh, I almost dipped in the water, but really I don't need any more water because I'm just adding more brown. So the red-breasted robin is kind of a grayish brown. And it has some little white spots kind of near its belly. And then it has that red patch right on its chest. So I didn't want to paint it all black because it's not really like a black bird exactly. That's why I did a little bit of brown first. And I'm doing the same thing with the wing here. Do you see how I kind of paint until all the paint on my brush is gone? I try to smear it all around. That way there's no big globs. Part of the reason I do that is because it'll dry better that way. And the other reason is so that it looks nice and even. Now let's get some of the black paint on. I need to wash my brush before I use a new color. So I swirl my brush around and I can feel it touching the bottom of my water container gently. That's how I know that it's taking off all that extra paint on there. But it's still really drippy. So we're going to wipe it on the edge. Okay. Now for some black paint. And you see how when I paint on this, I'm doing like little bitty brush strokes? Why do you think I'm doing that? What does it look like? I think it looks more like feathers. So that's why I'm doing it this way. If that's hard to do, you don't have to. Don't worry. The whole idea is to have fun and make something that you enjoy. So if it's too hard, that's all right. I know, I painted this where the chest is going to be, but I'm going to put some red paper on top of it. So I did the same thing here. I painted the whole bird, and then I added paper here, and I added paper for the eye and the beak. That way I didn't have to worry about like trying to keep my my paint separate from the rest, like the red paint separate from the rest. Let's paint the wing. Again, you see how the cuts are going this way? So I'm not painting it opposite of that. I'm going the same direction as the cuts of the paper. And it just makes it easier to paint that way. I think I want to paint this one a tiny bit extra dark because I want it to stand out from the body. All right. Since I'm done painting for now, in fact, I think I'm totally done painting. I'm going to close my paints, wash my brush, wipe it off. All right, I'm going to set that to the side for now. Now the next part means what we're going to do is we're going to make the eye, the beak, and all these little tiny pieces of torn red paper for the chest. So I'm going to set this to the side and let it dry for just a minute. Maybe I'll set it right up there. There we go. So to make the little red parts of the chest, I tore up some little pieces of red paper, and I'll show you how. So here's my red scrap paper, and I put my thumb and fingers together like this, like they're pinching, right? So I pinch the paper, and I hold both my thumbs, they're on the same side. Now one thumb I pull towards my body, and the other thumb I push away. So like this. It makes a nice long strip. And so I can do that again. Ooh, that makes a little bitty one. And what I want to do is I want to tear it into small pieces. The smaller the piece you tear, the cooler it will look, because you can really get some kind of textural precision, like where you get precise spots for wherever the texture is going to go. And you have a very small spot to work in. So it's important that you have little pieces. So you want to see me tear it again? I'm holding this at the end like this. And one thumb and hand turns toward me like this. And the other doesn't. Oh, that one tore a little big. I better tear it in half. So while you're tearing these small pieces of paper, your paint should be drying. Because we want it to be pretty dry by the time we start our gluing. I won't glue the wing on, excuse me, I said wings. Most birds have two wings, of course, but for today we're only doing one side of the bird. I mean, like, you have enough if you wanted to. You could do wings on both sides. You could paint both sides. I just chose to only do one side, but you could do both sides if you wanted to have like a 3D bird. Definitely could. I'm almost finished tearing. And then we'll do the beak and the eye. Okay. Set those off to the side. Now, the trick here is don't sneeze. Don't breathe too hard on them or all your confetti will fly away. Happened to me a little bit ago. I was blowing some little bits and pieces away, and all of a sudden I see my little red confetti paper just everywhere, all over the table. So we all make mistakes, but usually we can clean up, if we make a mistake like that. So can fix it. Now you probably won't need this much, but it's nice to have just in case. All right, so this is one of the leftover pieces from earlier, and I want to use that to make a circle for my eye. And this is going to be a really small circle. Before I cut anything, I like to draw it. Okay. Another thing you could do, instead of cutting a tiny circle or having your adult help you cut a tiny circle, sometimes people have those handheld hole punchers, and you can punch holes with them for binding papers together and things. And this is almost the exact perfect size. Like if you were to use a hole puncher, it would punch out a circle about this size. I don't have a hole puncher at my house, so I'm just going to cut it, but I want you to watch how I do it. So move a little closer so you can see. I cut little bits and then I spin it. Now this is all in my way and I don't want it anymore, so I'm just going to cut this off. I don't need that, but it was in my way. And you know what else? That's in my way. And so is this. So I put my scissors where I want them to go, and I turn it and cut it. And sometimes it gets down to this part where you're like, oh, it's really tiny. If you just cut off a little bit every time, eventually you get to the point where you're almost done. So it's not a perfect circle, but you never know. Pretty good. Okay. So now's when you need your marker. And you're just going to draw a black circle that covers most of it, but leaves a little bit of white. Okay, our eye is finished. Now, do you remember my yellow scrap paper from earlier? I cut off a little piece. And I'm going to cut this into a triangle. And I don't know that I want it to be huge. It's not like they have like, you know, woodpecker sized noses. They're not so pointy, their beaks. Just like kind of decide how big you want it. And you can cut it down later if you want. That's what I've got so far. The rest I think is scraps. All right, I'm gonna set this here so you can see the finished product, but it's time to do some construction to build it together. Now mine is still a little wet, so I am gonna use a tissue and just gently place it. I'm not rubbing it, I'm just placing it and then picking it up. And see, it picked up all this like extra paint. The lines I made, like the marks I made are still pretty much there. I'm going to do the same thing here with this one. You see, I just pressed it. I'm not rubbing it. I just want to like blot it basically and pick things up without ruining what's already on there. These are pretty dry now. Okay, this is my scraps. Okay, time to assemble. It's funny because most of the time I say, you know what, you should always assemble before you paint. But I think this is one of those cases where it's easier to actually like paint the individual pieces and then put them together. And that's because you don't want to mix paints on everything. You want it to kind of be a little different from each other. So I thought it would be hard to paint them differently from each other without doing it first. All right, we're going to use our glue. And remember, our nozzle, looks like it was almost open. Our nozzle's here, the orange part. We're going to twist it. And oh, you know what? I happen to have a little bit of like leftover glue here, which is going to cause a problem. So one of the things we do when we use glue is we use our fingernails to pick off that little extra bit of glue. And then it should come out really easily. And I mean, it's going to happen whether you close your glue bottle every time or not. Sometimes you'll just have glue on the nozzle and it dries and makes like a little thin layer that you have to pick off. All right, so let's start with the wing, okay? I'll move it closer and I'll turn it so that you can see. Okay. I think that's a good spot for a wing, right there. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the back of the wing and then stick it here. Remember, when we stick things down, and I'm not going to glue all of this, just the top part, so he has a little flappy part right here. Remember when we glue things, we hold it down, we give it pressure, we hold it down, and count to 10. Probably already at 5, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a little bit left over, but this glue dries clear, so that's okay. Now, let's put on the eye, okay? I think I want it like right here. You know what? I should have gone slower because now I've got like a big glob there. Just want a little bit. Boop. All right, now about the beak. You can glue it to the front or to the back. Up to you on that. I had some glue left on my finger from when I cleaned up before on the eye, so just use that amount. That's pretty cute. Now he kind of looks like a sparrow almost. All right, now for the red chest feathers, we're going to use our glue and we're going to make lots of little dots close together. So here, dot, 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 dot. Oh, that's a big one, dot. And I'm trying to keep them all kind of together here. So I'm just squeezing a tiny, tiny bit. I'm not squeezing hard, just the littlest bit. And all this in here, I'm going to try and cover up with the red confetti we tore. So I'll take pieces and put them on. Part of the trick here is to make sure it doesn't go off the edge of the bird, because then it will look like it's a stray feather or something. So you see how I'm trying to kind of make a shape with these? It's kind of like a mosaic or collage. What's a mosaic, you wonder? Well, mosaic is a term we use for when people use pieces of tile, small pieces of tile. You know, like tile you see on the wall of a kitchen or bathroom floor. And they use those pieces of tile to create one whole picture. So like little pieces all put together to make one whole image. That's a mosaic. It can be made with glass or ceramic tile usually. Those are the two things. And a collage is what we call something that you've made in a similar manner with lots of little pieces making one whole art piece. And it's usually made from paper, which happens to be what we have here. So if you cover up all your glue and you still have brown places like I do, we're going to add some more glue dots and add some more pieces of red paper to cover up. You see how I'm like really thinking about where everything goes? It's because I want it to look tidy. All right, I've still got some brown spots, so I'm going to add some glue here and right there. Then I just cover those up. Oh, that's a cute bird. All right, let's see. Close my glue before I forget. Set it to the side. We've got our two little birds here. Well, I hope you enjoyed making a cute little robin for springtime with me. And I just wanted to let you know, you can make almost any kind of bird, a songbird and things like that, the same kind of way with different colors. So if you wanted to make a cardinal, which we see here during the winter time, you could make it all red. The male cardinals are all red. And then they have a little crest, like a little mohawk. So you would give it some extra little piece of, paper up here to make it look like it has a little pointy mohawk. If you want to do bluebirds, you could make them blue and red. If you wanted to do sparrows, those are usually black and white and sometimes gray. And there's lots of other birds, so you could look up all different kinds of birds. In fact, you could even do like tropical birds. You could do a toucan if you wanted to, and just give it a really long, colorful, arched nose for the beak. So I encourage you to think about all the kinds of birds you can make with this. And just remember, it's a really simple shape from our paper plate. And we gave us some little cuts for the tail and the feathers, and everything else, it's up to your imagination. Well, thank you for joining us for the Discovery Days at Home for the Longmont Museum. And hopefully you'll join us in person again when the museum opens. Be well.